From the outside, Mariam's house looked like any other on Sycamore Street. It had 2 stories, a white picket fence, and a neatly trimmed lawn. People walked past without a second thought. Neighbors smiled at Mariam's father, and teachers praised Mariam for being polite and quiet. No one knew what really happened behind that door. Inside, the house was a place of fear. Her father's temper was like a ticking bomb. When he came home, Mariam would hold her breath, listening to his footsteps. If he had a bad day, she knew what would come next. Yelling, blame, sometimes worse. Her mother barely spoke anymore. She sat in front of the TV with empty eyes like a ghost. Mariam learned how to disappear into the background. She moved carefully, spoke softly, and tried not to be noticed. But deep inside, a small voice whispered to her, "This isn't the life you're meant to live." Mariam found peace in books. Every day after school, she went to the library and read for hours. She read about brave women, explorers, and inventors. She imagined herself far away from home, solving problems and building something amazing. She started writing in a notebook. She didn't just write about her pain, she wrote dreams. She wrote reminders to herself, "You are not what he says you are. You will escape. One day, you will help others." At 13, she found an old computer at school and learned how to use it. By watching free videos and reading library books, she taught herself how to code. She felt powerful every time she made something work on the screen. By 15, she was building websites for small businesses using a fake name. She hid the money in a jar under her floorboard. That jar was her escape plan. Everything changed one cold night. Her father came home angry. He shouted louder than ever. He threw a plate. He hit her. The next morning, she went to school with a black eye. The nurse asked questions. Mariam lied and said she fell. But the nurse looked into her eyes and said quietly, "You don't have to go back." That night, Mariam ran. She had no bag, no plan, only the jar of money, a hoodie, and a heart full of fear. She walked for hours until she found a youth crisis center. The shelter was crowded and noisy, but it was safe. There were kids like her, with stories full of pain. She finally felt like she wasn't alone. Living in a shelter wasn't easy. Mariam cried some nights. She missed school, she worked washing dishes, and she studied at night for her GED. It was hard, but she never gave up. She kept learning how to code. She borrowed old laptops from the shelter and used free Wi-Fi at the library. Her projects got better. She made apps that helped people find local shelters and food banks. At 18, she passed her GED. A community college gave her a scholarship. She worked 2 jobs and sometimes slept in her car to pay for books. But she kept going. One day her professor saw her work and said, "You have a gift. You can change lives with this." Her professor helped her get an internship at a tech company. At first she was nervous. She had never been in a real office before. But she worked hard and asked lots of questions. Her boss noticed her creativity. "What do you want to build?" he asked. She thought for a moment and said, "Something that helps people like me." That answer changed everything. Mariam created a website that helped people in crisis. It listed shelters, hotlines, and clinics. It hid the user's location and identity so it was safe to use. She called it PhoenixNet because a phoenix rises from ashes. By age 23, she turned PhoenixNet into a nonprofit. She hired other survivors. She spoke at events. Every time she stood on a stage, she remembered that little girl who used to hide in her room, writing in a notebook. At 25, her nonprofit won an award. She was on the news. People began writing to her from around the world, thanking her. But one night, she got a voicemail she never expected. "Mariam, it's your mother." She froze. "I'm sorry. I should have protected you. He passed away last year. I know you don't owe me anything. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of what you've become." Mariam sat in silence. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in over 10 years. The memories came back, but instead of pain, she felt calm. She didn't return the call, but she wrote a letter. In it, she said, "I hope you find peace." I have. At 30, Mariam bought a large house in her city. She turned it into a shelter for young women. She named it the Turning Room. Because sometimes, she told the news, your life changes not when something begins, but when you decide it will no longer end the same way. The shelter offered beds, classes, therapy, and job training. She made sure everyone who walked in felt safe. On the wall at the entrance, framed in glass, was a paper from her old notebook. It said, "This pain is temporary. My life is not." Mariam didn't write a book about her life. She didn't need to. Her work spoke louder. She created mentorship programs for girls who wanted to learn tech. She gave out emergency grants for women who wanted to go back to school. Once a month, she returned to the same library from her childhood and taught a free coding class. She told the students, "You don't need to have a perfect past to create a powerful future." People started calling her a hero. But Mariam always said, "I'm not a hero. I just never gave up." One evening, Mariam was locking up the turning room when she saw a girl sitting on the front steps. The girl was hugging a small backpack, her face bruised and eyes full of fear. Mariam sat beside her. "Hi, I'm Mariam. You're safe now." The girl looked up. "Why do you help people like me?" Mariam smiled. "Because I was you once, and someone told me I could be more." She gave the girl a blanket and opened the door. "You don't have to let go of what happened to move forward," she said softly. "You just have to stop letting it define you." That night, the cycle broke again, not with fists or shouting, but with kindness, warmth, and a choice to rise. Years passed. Mariam's turning room expanded into 3 cities. She met women who used to sleep on park benches, but now ran their own businesses. One day, a woman who had stayed at the shelter invited Mariam to her graduation. "I'm walking across that stage because you opened a door," she said, hugging her. Mariam stood in the back, tears in her eyes. She thought about her own journey, the pain, the fear, the long nights. But she also saw what it had built, not just a shelter, a movement. And every time a girl walked into the turning room, Mariam whispered inside her heart, "You matter. You always did. Because some people are born to survive. But Mariam, she was born to rise and to lift others with her." Mariam's story teaches us that no matter how dark the past may be, it does not have to decide the future. Pain and fear can feel overwhelming, but within each person is a spark of hope and strength waiting to be discovered. Choosing to rise, to keep going, even when the world feels heavy, is a powerful act of courage. Healing takes time, and the path is never easy, but every small step forward builds a better tomorrow. Most importantly, Mariam shows us that we are not defined by what happened to us, but by what we choose to do with those experiences. When we turn our pain into purpose, we can light the way for others and ourselves. If you or someone you know is struggling, remember this: you are not alone, and your story is still being written. There is help, there is hope, and there is always a chance to rise. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new story.